poem for Nipper, the RCA Victor talking machine terrier. His master's voice. He sits there forever, that milk-white dog, eternally attuned, cloth ear angled into the flowering vase of the now-forgotten gramophone. Waits there, in the center of a shining sea, a revolving dance floor with music-making bands. Sits, listening, inside cranked-up contraptions with wide-open mouths that cry out everywhere, often in Italian, Caruso-like, ridi, pagliaccio, with the voice of more than one maestro. Harks to man-made machines that play to this permanently quiet and patient canine friend suspended in time and spun through eras and millions of crackling operas and arias, tin-plated symphonies, and now faded love songs. In all his pure and unwavering fidelity. Welcome to the latest floating poetry broadcast, and thank you for leaning in. Some of you for the first time, others again, others listening often. I'm glad you're here for show 144 in my ongoing weekly series, coming to you live from the coast of Rhode Island. This is your poet and poetorialist, Colin Goedecke, a voice for living our days more fully, more alively, more poetically. In broadcast 143, we loosened up. We went smoothing through layers of relaxing versus tightening and steeling ourselves, softening, detensifying, taking opportunities to be at ease, be more laid back and less anxious, less rigid, less wound up. This week it's a dog's life, a celebration of dogs, a jaunt through the kingdom of canines and things colorful to emotional about these beloved, unconditionally loving beasts. I've dug up all kinds of cultural commentary, poetry, and inquiry for you, for us, to enjoy, to give our tails a good wag. So we'll start with a poem of mine from Mexico. El perro y el coco, the dog and the coconut. She, all chocolate legs and tail, plunges into the sea to find and fetch a furry coconut from the salty waves where her señorito has flung it for play. And once retrieved, like a man balancing a melon from his mouth, she drops it down in the sand and using one brown paw, her hand, to hold it in place, happily tears the husk away, strip by hairy strip, until it's smooth as whittled wood. Then, barking once at the naked old nut, she picks it up again by the end and bounds off out of view. Dog by Lawrence Ferlinghetti. The dog trots freely in the street and sees reality, and the things he sees are bigger than himself, and the things he sees are his reality. Drunks in doorways, moons on trees. The dog trots freely through the street, and the things he sees are smaller than himself. Fish on newsprint, ants in holes. Chickens in Chinatown windows, their heads a block away. The dog trots freely in the street, and the things he smells something like himself. The dog trots freely in the street past puddles and babies, cats and cigars, pool rooms and policemen. He doesn't hate cops. He merely has no use for them, and he goes past them and past the dead cows hung up whole in front of the San Francisco meat market. He would rather eat a tender cow than a tough policeman, though either might do. And he goes past the Romeo Ravioli factory and past Coit's Tower and past Congressman Doyle. He's afraid of Coit's Tower, but he's not afraid of Congressman Doyle, although what he hears is very discouraging, very depressing, very absurd to a sad young dog like himself, to a serious dog like himself. But he has his own free world to live in, his own fleas to eat. He will not be muzzled. Congressman Doyle is just another fire hydrant to him. The dog trots freely in the street and has his own dog's life to live and to think about and to reflect upon, touching and tasting and testing everything, investigating everything, without benefit of perjury. A real realist with a real tale to tell, and a real tale to tell it with. A real, live, barking, democratic dog engaged in real free enterprise with something to say about ontology, something to say about reality, and how to see it and how to hear it, with his head cocked sideways at street corners, as if he is just about to have his picture taken for Victor Records, listening for his master's voice, and looking, like a living question mark, into the great gramophone of puzzling existence, with its wondrous hollow horn, which always seems just about to spout forth some victorious answer to everything. Wonderful. Lawrence Ferlinghetti from a Coney Island of the Mind. Interesting. I'd written that other poem that we open with years ago, and I never came across this poem until I was putting together material. So how about that? He was also on the same scent as I was with the Victor, that machine talking dog. Love that. Synchronicity. Okay, Joyce Sidman, Dog in Bed. Nose tucked under tail. You are a warm-furred planet centered in my bed. All night I orbit, tangle-limbed, in the slim space allotted to me. If I accidentally bump you from sleep, you shift, groan, drape your chin on my hip. Oh, that languid movie star drape. I can never resist it. Digging my fingers into your fur, kneading, I wonder, how do you dream? What do you adore? Why should your black silk ears feel like happiness? This is how it is with love. Once invited, it steps in gently, circles twice, and takes up as much space as you will give it. Dog in Bed. Thank you, Joyce Sidman. Dog from Wikipedia. The dog, Canis familiaris, or Canis lupus familiaris, is a domesticated descendant of the wolf, also called the domestic dog, derived from the extinct Pleistocene wolf, and the modern wolf is the dog's nearest living relative. Dogs were the first species to be domesticated by hunter-gatherers over 15,000 years ago, before the development of agriculture. Over the millennia, they became uniquely adapted to human behavior, and the human-canine bond has been a topic of frequent study. This influence on human society has given them the sobriquet of man's best friend. Well, all right, some questions about dogs for you. What do you love most about them? What very meaningful place or part have dogs, or one dog in particular, had or played in your life? Was there a great dog in your childhood? A beloved dog? Maybe a family dog? What kind? What name? What was their personality like? Was there any life lesson a dog has taught you? What about the best fun you ever had with a dog? Or some amusing experience? I was thinking back on that question to myself, and many, many years ago, decades ago, I was at university in Washington, and I was invited over to people through another friend I had not met, a lawyer couple, at their home, and I wore my best suit, beautiful blue flannel double-breasted suit, quite dashing, just meticulous, navy blue. Got to the house, knocked on the door, brought some flowers. Door opens up. Out bounds a Dalmatian. I was so excited, as they all are, wrapped itself around and around and around my legs. I looked down. My blue flannel suit legs were white with fur. I was mortified. I had not even stepped into the house, and there was no way of brushing it all off. And I'm very particular about my clothes, so you can imagine I practically burst a gasket over that one, quietly. That's one of my stories. We all laughed about it, but it was sort of funny now, more. So, yeah. Well, I'm wondering if you ever lost a dog, and if so, how deeply did that loss affect you? Do you have a faithful companion in your life now of a canine kind, maybe by your side as you listen? If you were a dog, or were being reincarnated as a dog, what breed would you want to be? And what kind of owner or owners would you like to have? From Hepper.com, on the most famous dogs in literature, some of them. There's no denying that humans have had a love affair with dogs for thousands of years. Back then, as today, dogs played an important role in our daily lives as companions, protectors, and confidants. It's no surprise that they've also played a large role in literature and still do today. As far back as the early 7th century, they were written about in adoring terms. Beyond, of course, being labeled man's best friend, they have been authors' best friends for just as long. So here's a few. From literature, Argos. A friend to Odysseus in the Odyssey, the only creature that recognizes him after 20 years away from his home in Ithaca. Toto, from The Wizard of Oz. A precocious and valiant cairn terrier, Toto made both the book and the movie stand out. Snoopy, of course, what many would know. Charles Schulz, it has been said, based the character of Charlie Brown on himself, and he based Snoopy on his childhood dog, Spike. There was Lassie, long-haired collie, so popular for a time. I remember as a boy, the Lassie television series. Well, she was in 7 movies and a hugely popular show of the same name that I was thinking about. My favorite is Milou, the faithful and witty wire fox terrier to Tintin in those stories by the author Hergé. He's also one of the few, if any, that has a penchant for whiskey-drinking dog. So Milou, instantly recognizable and has a massive following in France, Belgium, and elsewhere in Europe. Why? They write, mostly for his acerbic wit, which tempers the boundless optimism of his master Tintin. Plus, he drinks whiskey. Yeah. How about Jack London's Buck, The Call of the Wild? Buck goes from a pampered, easy life to the extreme and often violent life of a sled dog, and in the end, becomes a better dog for it. I was also thinking of the delightful dog in the Thin Man movies, and I looked that up and found a little note about it. That was Asta, A-S-T-A, in the 1930s. Like Harrison Ford playing Indiana Jones and Han Solo, Skippy played characters. You might know him from his famous role as Asta. Wire Fox Terrier, born in 1931, first appeared in a circus comedy called The Half-Naked Truth, but his breakthrough came in 1934's The Thin Man with William Powell and Myrna Loy, in which he played the smart, personable dog of Nick and Nora Charles, the smart, personable, alcoholic crime solvers. The movie was a hit, and so was the clever dog. But he also appeared with Cary Grant in The Awful Truth. Wonderful, wonderful story movie. Grant and Hepburn's classic Bringing Up Baby. Fantastic. I've seen it dozens of times. That was 1938. As the naughty dog who steals a dinosaur bone and the adventure that ensues. So, a couple of film dogs and films. And one more. This is a more contemporary film, I think. This is 2008. This is a curious film. I liked it very much. Dean Spanley. Beautifully made and acted English film. Whimsical, poignant at the same time. To recommend to you, by the way. Peter O'Toole, Sam Neill, Jeremy Northam are in it. Great actors. And there was one reviewer wrote years back about it. I urge viewers not to read any summary of the story that reveals details of the plot. Only say that the story is mystical and quixotic. It has many admirers, and it starts with the narration by a young Fisk visiting the elder Fisk, his father, a difficult relationship, and it's set in 1910. Perfect sets and costumes. Dialogue, of course. And Dean Spanley reminds one of the joys of the well-written tale where language enthralls. It celebrates the well-read line, the poignancy and pauses, the synergy between image and music, and performances to be cherished. And there's a big twist around dogs, which is why I'm not going to give it away in that film. So you might want to see it. Bruce Guernsey, the seeing eye dog, sneaks out nights, cool and beret. His master's dark glasses, sips Cointreau at the dog cafe, and watches. Is the poet of dogs with a voice that sees for the man who can't, that speaks the meaning of red, of green. Is the loneliest dog at the dog cafe, where hounds down suds and the barking is loud. Thank you, Bruce Guernsey. This is a poem I wrote for my goddaughter, Axel Scheib, and a lovely painting she made back in 2008, one of others, but I wrote a series of poems, one per each painting. I knew a dog who could climb trees. Yes, a dog, a beagle in fact, who could climb trees like a leopard or monkey. Always tall trees, always in summer, en été, when the branches were full of leaves and the melodies of birds, who climbed where he could be much closer to the clouds and could wag his tail at the whole world below and see things no other dog could see. Salty Dog came to mind. Of course, that's a nickname for a sailor who has spent much of his life aboard a ship at sea. I love that it's a salty dog. It's also a modern cocktail. Maybe you've had one. So I went to delish.com, saw a recipe for it. I think I've only made it once, so I couldn't remember. Crisp, fruity, refreshing, perfectly balanced, and only 3 ingredients. A go-to summer cocktail. It was born from another classic, the Greyhound, that became popular in the 1920s. The Greyhound is a blend of gin and fresh squeezed grapefruit juice over ice. The most commonly held belief is that actor and entertainer Georgie Jessel added salt to the rim of his Greyhound to tame the bitterness and bring out the sweetness in the grapefruit, and thus the Salty Dog was born. Yeah, it was originally a gin drink, I think. More popular vodka now. I also thought of the Black Dog, Winston Churchill's Black Dog, but not the literal one. So this is from the conversation.com about Winston Churchill and his, quote, Black Dog of Greatness. Well, when World War II came to Great Britain, the king offered Churchill the premiership, and both Conservative and Labour MPs shuddered. Were they putting the country in that man's hands? Little did they know how shaky those hands were. For decades, Churchill had avoided standing too close to balconies and train platforms. He named his depression, which it was, his Black Dog, following Samuel Johnson, who, like many great men, suffered from the great disease of manic depression. He was so paralyzed by despair that he spent time in bed, had little energy, few interests, lost his appetite, couldn't concentrate. He was minimally functional, and this didn't just happen once or twice in the 1930s, but also in the 20s and 10s and earlier. These darker periods would last a few months, and then he'd come out of it and be his normal self. In writing to his wife in 1911, after hearing a friend's wife had received some help for depression from a German doctor, he wrote, I think this man might be useful to me if my Black Dog returns. He seems quite away from me now. It's such a relief. All the colors come back into the picture. He has 1,000 ideas a day, said Franklin Roosevelt, 4 of which are good. These are manic symptoms, part of the disease of manic depression, which includes, but is not exactly the same thing as today's bipolar illness terminology. So, Churchill's Black Dog. Little did many know, considering how industrious he was. He was like a human dynamo, and when we think of him as the prime minister in World War II, thank heavens he could do that and didn't fall away from depression. From arthive.com, loyalty, status, and worldview. The dog is an artistic symbol. Throughout nearly all human history, dogs have been not only guardians, helpers, and companions, but also muses. They've been immortalized in paintings and sculptures, prints, and photographs. Now that centuries have passed, Dogs are still our companions and living symbols of protection, loyalty, and unconditional love. So it's no secret why they've been a very important and noticeable part of our visual history for so long. So I'll just pull a few snippets out here. For a long time, they were viewed as guides, a liaison between our physical world and beyond. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Celts, and others saw the dog's role in being the sacred keeper of other worlds that are beyond our earthly experience. In Celtic beliefs, they symbolized heroism and embodied the qualities so important for a warrior: bravery, endurance, and courage. For the Chinese, dogs have not only symbolized loyalty and obedience, but also good luck and prosperity. It's believed that a dog, by wagging its tail, heralds great wealth, and the powerful feng shui talisman, a pair of foo dogs, protects the building from harmful people and negative energies, helps succeed in business, and improve the welfare. The Japanese raccoon dog, tanuki, is a favorite subject both in traditional and modern Japanese art. In folklore and legends, these animals are described as having paranormal abilities. So there's some things I didn't know. You may not have known. You might enjoy Beloved Dog. That's the title of Myra Kalman's illustrated love letter to our canine companions. And the opening of that is, this book is a compendium of a tribute to the many dogs I have encountered over the years in life and in books. They are constant reminders that life reveals the best of itself when we live fully in the moment and extend our unconditional love. And it is very true that the most tender, uncomplicated, most generous part of our being blossoms without any effort when it comes to the love of a dog. Well said, lovely. And Mary Oliver, Dog Songs, on what dogs teach us about the meaning of our human lives. Here's a poem from that. Luke. I had a dog who loved flowers. Briskly she went through the fields, yet paused for the honeysuckle or the rose, her dark head and her wet nose touching the face of every one with its petals of silk, with its fragrance rising into the air, where the bees, their bodies heavy with pollen, hovered, and easily she adored every blossom, not in the serious, careful way that we choose this blossom or that blossom, the way we praise or don't praise, the way we love or don't love, but the way we long to be, that happy in the heaven of earth, that wild, that loving. Thank you, Mary Oliver. When I mentioned some days, a week ago, that to my local friend, Jim Bracken, and his wife, that I was going to do a show on dogs, he told me this: you take your wife and your dog and lock them in the trunk of your car for a day. Then you go back and open the trunk up and find out who's happy to see you. Imagine the scene. Imagine that scene. I'm sure the dog would be wagging its tail and your wife would be wagging a crowbar to crown you with. E.B. White has a book on dogs, E.B. White on dogs, poems and other things. It's a compendium, compiled actually by his granddaughter and literary executor, Martha White. And it's charming. It's a charming celebration about the premier champion of the canine, E.B. White, great writer. And then there's the big New Yorker Book of Dogs. I didn't know about that one. Collects canine-themed gems, fiction, poetry, feature articles, humor, cartoons, cover art, manuscript drafts, from a slew of titans culled from the magazine's archive, including Brain Pickings regulars E.B. White, Myra Kalman, John Updike, Roald Dahl. It's divided into 4 sections: good dogs, bad dogs, top dogs, and underdogs, and spans such subjects as evolution, domesticity, love, family, obedience, bereavement, language, and more. Lavishly illustrated 400-page tome, a treat from cover to cover. That's from the Marginalian, their review of that. Yeah, I'd like to see that sometime, actually. Well, I spoke of loss in my questions earlier, losing a beloved dog, and have a few pieces on that, speak to that. Ted Kuser's poem, Death of a Dog. Death of a dog. The next morning I felt that our house had been lifted away from its foundation during the night and was now adrift. Though so heavy, it drew a foot or more of whatever was buoying it up. Not water, but something cold and thin and clear. Silence riffling its surface as the house began to turn on a strengthening current, leaving, taking my wife and me with it. And though it had never occurred to me until that moment, for 15 years our dog had held down what we had by pressing his belly to the floors, his front paws too, and with him, gone the house, had begun to float out onto emptiness, no solid ground in sight. Thank you, Ted Kusser. I used the Beatles song, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, as my frame for this poem. It's a poem from my wonderful longtime friend, Dick Russack in Texas, and his faithful companion now passed along into the ether, Lucy. This is Lucy in the Sky. You picture yourself in your chair by the ocean with deep pine green trees and deep Maine blue skies. A small voice now calls you. You look over slowly to a dog with such animate eyes. Day-shaped good feelings of autumn and summer float in through the windows and in through your mind as you look for that dog who sat by you so sweetly, the one with the sun in her eyes. Lucy in the Sky, your old friend. You'd walk her on down to a dock on the harbor where freewheeling people ate lobsters and fries. Everyone smiled as you strolled past the waters that flowed oh so beautifully by. Now a trusty old ferry appears at the shoreline, ready to take you away on the tide. You climb aboard with your eyes on the cloud banks and see your dear Lucy up there in the sky, your old friend with the animate eyes. Dog Biscuits by Chase Twitchell. After my father's cremation, my sisters and I agreed to bury him privately when the ground thawed. One will plant a flowering tree, one see to the stone it's cutting, one call the grave digger and the town clerk. It'll be just us, the daughters, presiding over ashes that could be any mammal's or those of any love dispersible by wind. Let's bury the secret violence to his dogs, Pompey and Tara, Juba and Molly. Their ashes already gone to this ground, and his, quote, escapades, as Mom called them. Here withers that branch of the tree. Let's bury the ring inscribed in perpetuum ave atque vale, translated hail and farewell by my father, hello and goodbye forever by Mom, a token dating back to the first separation, and a tennis ball for canine shades. Your dad is with his dogs now, said more than one person at the funeral. It'll be just us, the three inheritors, on a raw, windy day in Death's kingdom, lifting our eyes from the hole to the mountains hazed with spring, saying, in perpetuum ave atque vale, minor God of our Father, let's each of us drop a few dog biscuits into his grave. Thank you, Chase Twitchell. Eamon Grennan, Anglo-Irish poet. Dog. When I walk downhill, a stranger, into town, the same black dog always rises from where he's lying at the join between a patch of shade and a patch of sunlight and lopes over to the waist-high picket fence enclosing the garden he belongs to and puts, eager and awkward, his two floppy front paws atop the pointed uprights and lets them loll in the space between, pushing the thick black triangle of his face toward me for stroking. Liquid chestnut, his eyes seek my eyes. But when I enter those shallow pools of strangeness and try to fathom what swims in them or is behind them, he glances away, slides inside himself like sunshine in cloud, as if I'd touched some deep secret of his being, and he has to shy away, bruised by some shame he's afraid I'll hold against him, knowing in his bones and in the silky hairs at the back of this neck there is no way, after what can be exhausted in a moment's greeting, a command, the run of a hand round the supple purse of his ear, to get at understanding. And so he keeps his gaze averted, but wags his tail in time to the heart's fullness, opens his mouth to show a cave shaded purplish pink, two shining rows of teeth, a wet tongue he wipes my hand with, We stay minutes like this, bodies in touch with these knowing, acceptable ways of taking each other in, me gazing at his face and head, he glancing to my eyes and furtively away again, as if this isn't supposed to be happening. Until, at last, I murmur something, withdraw my hand, and he, sheepish and satisfied, detaches himself from the fence, unwinds to grass, drifts back to his spot, and sprawls there, watching out of sidelong eyes as I walk away, wondering what I am to him, this casual coming into and leaving his life of sensation and sleep. A feel of something neither light nor heavy stroking head and back, fondling ears, the taste of my raw hand under his tongue, the curious neutral touch of my cotton and denim and khaki pelt, and that odd way the buckled air vibrates that is my voice entering his ear as a cloud might float over the face of a mirror, or the look of my eyes, these fearful seekers trying to prospect out the scented cave he lives in. After what he won't give up, the small fire of the secret he carries between humiliations and flops with, full of the good day, on grass, all his borders tingling, beholding me as a cloud on black glass when I walk into and become the blinding purple-pink blaze of a bush, azaleas and rhododendrons burning me up for him. His world nothing but metamorphosis, then gone. And he is gone from my sight when I walk between the tidy gardens, saying polite good mornings, each gardener looking up with a smile of curiosity or a word exchanged, before both of us, like the creatures of habit and habitat we are, retreat to our secret lives, glancing away. Thank you, Eamon Grennan. New to me, new that poem, as are many I chose for us for that reason. Liesl Muller, what the dog perhaps hears. If an inaudible whistle blown between our lips can send him home to us, then silence is perhaps the sound of spiders breathing and roots mining the earth. It may be asparagus heaving, head first into the light and the long brown sound of cracked cups when it happens. We would like to ask the dog if there is a continuous whir because the child in the house keeps growing, if the snake really stretches full length without a click and the sun breaks through clouds without a decibel of effort, whether in autumn, when the trees dry up their wells, there isn't a shudder too high for us to hear. What is it like up there above the shut-off level of our simple ears? For us, there was no birth cry. The newborn bird is suddenly here, the egg broken, the nest alive, and we heard nothing when the whole world changed. Thank you, Lisa Muller. What the dog perhaps hears from her collection Alive Together. And into our last handful of sharings and musings for this broadcast, my friends. The Blessing of the Old Woman, the Tulip, and the Dog by Alicia Ostreicher. To be blessed, said the old woman, is to live and work so hard God's love washes right through you like milk through a cow. To be blessed, said the dark red tulip, is to knock their eyes out with the slug of lust implied by your upended skirt. To be blessed, said the dog, is to have a pinch of God inside you, and all the other dogs can smell it. Thank you, Alicia Ostreicher, from the Book of 70. And there's the dog star. I didn't know about the dog star more specifically until I was on an island in Greece years back, in the Cyclades, and it was on these, iconically on these ancient gold coins there on that Aegean island. So this poem came to me one day there. The dog star that barked. Instead of sending out rays of sound, when the dog star opened its bright round eyes and barked into space, into the night sky, above this darkly ancient island, it sent out rays of clarifying light, outshining lines, in all directions anyone awake could see from their fields or fishing boats. Anyone asleep could feel through the shutters of their dreams. That elders of the oldest days captured on silver coins and honored in faithfully sacred ceremonies. Dog Music by Paul Zimmer. Amongst dogs are listeners and singers. My big dog sang with me so purely, puckering her ruffled lips into an O, beginning with small swallowing sounds like Coltrane musing, then rising to power and resonance, gulping air to continue her passion and sense of flawless form, singing not with me, but for the art of dogs. We joined in many fine songs: Stardust, Naima, The Trout, My Rosary, Perdido. She was a great master and died young, leaving me with unrelieved grief, her talents known to only a few. Now I have a small dog who does not sing, but listens with discernment, requiring skill and spirit in my falsetto voice. I sing her name in words of love, andante, con brio, vivace, adagio. Sometimes she is so moved she turns to place a paw across her snout, closes her eyes, sighing like a girl I held and danced with years ago. But I am a pretender to dog music. The true strains rise only from the rich red chambers of a canine heart. These melodies best when the moon is up, listeners and singers together or apart, beyond friendship and anger, far from any human impostor. Ballads of long nights lifting to starlight, songs of bones, turds, conquests, hunts, smells, rankings, things settled long before our birth. Dog music. Thank you, Paul Zimmer. I thought that was delightful, fun. What did you think? The Secret Life of Smell and What Dogs Can Teach Us About Accessing Hidden Layers of Reality. This is about Alexandra Horowitz's book, Being a Dog, Following the Dog into the World of Smell. She is the director of the Dog Cognition Lab at Barnard College. And this book is a fascinating tour, says the Marginalian, of what Horowitz calls the surprising and sometimes alarming feats of olfactory perception that dogs perform daily and what they can teach us about swinging open the doors of our own perception by relearning some of our long-lost olfactory skills that grant us access to hidden layers of reality. So here's a slice or so from the book. She says, I am besotted with dogs, and to know a dog is to be interested in what it's like to be a dog, and that all begins with the nose. What the dog sees and knows comes through his nose, and the information that every dog, the tracking dog of course, but also the dog lying next to you, snoring on the couch, has about the world based on smell is unthinkably rich in a way humans once knew about and once acted on, but have since neglected. By following the dog's lead, we can learn from him about what we are missing, some of which is beyond our ability to sense, and some of which we simply need a guide to see. The world abounds with aromas, but we are spectacle-less. The dog can serve as our spectacles. In doing so, we may also see how to return to that more primal, so-called animal state of knowledge about ourselves and the world that we've forgotten in a culture wrought of technology and lab tests. To follow animals is to become more attuned to our own existence. To follow dogs is to begin to apprehend the experience of our silent, loyal partners through our days. So here she says, that crystallizes that invitation, the heart of her book. A summer trip in the car is not complete without notes of gasoline, cut grass, honeysuckle, warmed vinyl, sunscreen, overheated dog breath, and wet sandals, stirred by wind from the open windows or wafting up from the floorboards. I smell a thunderstorm approaching on my last visit to Colorado, the home of my family during my childhood when I come to help clean out the house after my father's death. The watery, fresh smell of sea air comes, I now know, from ozone carried down from higher altitudes. It's also the odor of the city when I emerge after swimming, the receptors pinging chlorine, silent for a long enough moment for me to smell the world in its absence. I smell gin on the man who sits next to me in 10C. I smell the acrid, lingering piles of freshly turned, festering wood chips on the other side of the park. I see two people with a dog, then a second later smell that dog's poo, which must have recently been deposited in a trash bin. I smell the art room at kindergarten before seeing it. I smell every book I open. I will never smell as a dog does. I accept it. It is dogs' difference I celebrate, and their ways of smelling, their very noses, are different. Quiet distillers of a world that we have stood up from and forgotten. And one more is The Genius of Dogs. How Dogs Are Smarter Than You Think by Brian Hare, evolutionary anthropologist, founder of the Duke Canine Cognition Center, and Vanessa Woods. A fascinating tour of radical research on canine cognition, from how the self-domestication of dogs gave them a new kind of social intelligence to what the minds of dogs reveal about our own. One of the most compelling parts of the book has less to do with dogs and more with genius itself. I'm interested in reading that sometime. Okay. The Victor Dog by James Merrill. Bix de Buxtehude de Boulay. The little white dog on the Victor label listens long and hard as he is able. It's all in a day's work, whatever plays. From judgment, it would seem, he has refrained. He even listens earnestly to Bloch, then builds a church upon our acid rock. He's the Lehrman's best friend. Or would it be if hearing and listening were the same? Does he hear? I fancy he rather smells those lemon gold arpeggios in Ravel's Les Jets d'Or du Palais de ceux qui s'aiment. He ponders the Schumann concerto's tall willow hit by lightning and stays put. When he surmises through one of Bach's eternal boxwood mazes the oboe pungent as a bitch in heat, or when the calypso decants its raw bay rum, or the moon in Wozzeck reddens ripe for murder, he doesn't sneeze or howl, just listens harder. Adamant needles bear down on him from the whirling of outer space, too black, too near. But he was taught as a puppy not to flinch, much less to imitate his bête noire blanche, who barked, fat foolish creature, at King Lear. Still others fought in the road's filth over Jezebel, slavered on hearths of horned and pelted barons. His forebears lacked, to say the least, forbearance. Can nature change in him? Nothing's impossible. The last chord fades. The night is cold and fine. His master's voice rasps through the groove's bare groves. Obediently in silence like the graves he sleeps there on the still warm gramophone, only to dream he is at the premiere of a Handel opera, long thought lost, Il Cane Minore. Its allegorical subject is his story. A little dog revolving round a spindle gives rise to harmonies beyond belief. A cast of stars is there in Victor's heart. No honey for the vanquished. Art is art. The life it asks of us is a dog's life. Okay, a little twisty, but another one that I found about the Victor dog. Didn't know about that either, James Merrill. Well, Mary Oliver once more, but not a poem, she said, because of the dog's joyfulness, our own is increased. It is no small gift. It's not the least reason why we should honor as well as love the dog of our own life and the dog down the street and all the dogs not yet born. What would the world be like without music or rivers or the green and tender grass? What would this world be like without dogs? Next to last, The Dogs at Live Oak Beach, Santa Cruz by Alicia Ostreicher. As if there could be a world of absolute innocence in which we forget ourselves. The owners throw sticks and half-balled tennis balls toward the surf, and the happy dogs leap after them as if catapulted. Black dogs, tan dogs, tubes of glorious muscle. Pursuing pleasure more than obedience, they race, skid to a halt in the wet sand. Sometimes they'll plunge straight into the foaming breakers like diving birds, letting the green turbulence toss them until they snap and sink teeth into floating wood, then bound back to their owners, shining wet, with passionate speed, for nothing, for absolutely nothing but joy. Lovely. Thank you, Alicia Ostreicher. And last for now, this is for Lilliput, 2005 to 2022, a Chihuahua that belonged to my dear sister Tiffany in Los Angeles, a dog that was so greatly loved and now greatly missed. And I wrote this in honor of the passing of that lovely beast. It's called Hi Lily, Hi Lily, Hi Lo. You may know the song of that name. Jimmy Durante sang it quite wonderfully, memorably. On every day there was a dog sharing a song of life, and how that dog would lift your heart. Going along post office to nail salon, taking in the sunshine and sunsets, dressing up, bedding down, eating like an army for such a Lilliputian body, and gourmandishly so, playing ball in all ways, drinking in and pouring out the love and liveliness during the long tale and tales of her days in the world. Hi Lily, hi Lily, hi lo. Thank you again, all of you, all the places and moments you are, as you leaned in here, cocked an ear in and a mind and senses in this way. Thank you for sharing this time and for sharing the shows with others to enjoy beyond today. And for those of you who send affirmations, which I so appreciate, and those who send gifts of appreciation, donations that do help support the work I faithfully and freely do to nourish and uplift your heart, mind, and spirit, and those of many others. If there's some theme I haven't covered that you'd like me to speak to or speak again to in another way, send me an email, colin@thepoetorialist.com. I'd love to know what your experience was of this show on It's a Dog's Life, including a beautiful or memorable experience you had with a dog in your past, recent, or present life. If you are sending a contribution, you can do so with ease by Venmo to Fivefold, Fivefold, at pipeline.com, or by PayPal to me at the same email, or by check in regular mail, P.O. Box 1032, Westerly, Rhode Island, 02891, or by credit or debit card through my site, thepoetorialist.com, and the Donate tab. Patrons can, yes, sponsor or host me now and then as a working poet in residence in an agreed place in the U.S. or elsewhere in the world to create a new flight of poetic art and dedicate it to them. Email me to explore. Meanwhile, you can hear all the broadcasts online on YouTube on the Floating Poetry playlist. I hope you'll lean in soon again. Until then, dear listeners, may you appreciate the life and times of dogs, their best qualities, their great capacities for love and faithfulness and playfulness and watchfulness. And yes, all the wonderfulness they have brought and bring to so many. And may you return in equal measure the gift and favor of their dear friendship and companionship. Goodbye for now, and good spirits.